Alright, hey guys, well, I got a video for today. I'm going to smoke some meat. So I got a Packers cut brisket here, a beef brisket that I'm going to smoke on the barbecue. I got to trim it up. My smoker isn't big enough to accommodate the whole brisket, so I'm going to have to cut it in half and do the flat and the point separately. The flat being the flatter side of the brisket, and the point being the thicker side. Has a little bit more fat, a little bit more meat. It can handle the heat a bit better, so this will be closer to the fire. So I'm going to do it on my wood smoker. I'm going to use charcoal and some maple probably to smoke it with, I'm going to season it with some salt and pepper and some garlic powder, or granulated garlic I should say. And I kind of follow like, I've done about 12 briskets so far and I've had really good success with them. I've gotten better and better, so I figured I'd share how I do it. And I follow like Franklin BBQ, and I also have his book, which I recommend checking out. And it's just a really good comprehensive book on just smoking meat. It's not really a recipe guide, it's just a good book on theory and how to. So check that out if you're really interested in smoking meat. So there's really nothing magical about smoking meat. You just need low heat, low and slow, time, and it just breaks down the connective tissue and you end up with melty, delicious, just awesome beefy goodness. So what I'm going to do is cut this in half, trim it, apply the rub, and then stick it on the smoker. So let's get to it. So I'm going to just cut this open the sink so it's a little bit cleaner, and then I'm going to trim it up. You can see there's a really nice piece of fat going through the center of the brisket here. That's going to render down really nice. There's certain parts of it, the harder fat, that won't render down very nice, and I'm going to cut a lot of that off. So I'm going to trim off a lot of this stuff here. So I'm going to get rid of the plastic here, stick on a glove, and then start trimming. So unfortunately, when they trimmed this brisket, they took out a little bit of the fat cap here on the top here, and then back here a little bit. But you gotta work with what you got. So I'm gonna trim off this fat a little bit. It's not too bad. It's already at about ½ inch to ¼ of an inch all the way around. I'm just gonna trim it down just a little bit, just to get rid of some of the high spots, and then just to get off any of the spots that are just kind of like little pieces like that here, just so that they don't burn up in the smoker. So I'm gonna trim off this big chunk here. That's really not much good for anything because it won't render down. Alright, so the brisket's trimmed. I didn't take off a ton. I took off most of the fat that probably won't render out very well. They've already trimmed this brisket down pretty thin, so I'm going to try to salvage as much fat as possible, so that way it's got some time to render out, and you know, just a little extra fat will hopefully keep it moist over the 12 hours that we're going to be cooking this. Alright, so all I'm going to do now is apply the rub, and it'll be ready for smoking. Alright, next I'm going to apply the rub, and I got a little bit of oil here, vegetable oil. I'm just going to apply it on this, just to rub this around so that it'll adhere, so the rub will adhere to the meat. Then I'm going to apply my salt and pepper mixture here, just 50-50, 1 part salt, 1 part ground pepper. And and I'm going to just shake it, apply it nice and even coat. I don't want to apply too much, but I want to apply enough so that it does coat the brisket. So I'm going to do it nice and high. Just going to put this on a pan to rest. Now we'll do the point. Alright, so I got the rub applied. These are ready to go out on the smoker. They're looking real nice. I got the rub nice and even, I think. Looks pretty good to me anyway. I'm pretty happy with that. So I got the point on this side, and I got the flat on this side. I'll put this one further away from the heat, and then I'll put the point closer to the heat because this is a bigger chunk of meat. It's going to take a little longer. It'll take the heat a lot better. So it is 6 o'clock in the morning. I had prepared these briskets the night before, a few hours ago actually, and I put them in the fridge just to let them rest. So that way I didn't have to do it first thing in the morning. This works really well. I've done this a few times, works great. So now I gotta go start the fire and get these briskets on. So you need about 11 to 12 hours to do a brisket, and generally 12 hours depending on how big it is. So let's go start the fire. Alright, I'm out at the smoker. It is so early that there's still not a lot of light. So what I did the night before was I prepared my charcoal chimney, so all I have to do is light it. And what makes this so handy is that as soon as I light it, this charcoal will heat up in about 15 minutes. Okay, as you can see, the charcoal chimney is nice and hot now. It's only been 10 minutes. So I'm going to dump out this charcoal now. I'm going to add a water pan to keep things nice and moist, so the cook chamber doesn't dry out. Now it's time to put the meat on. So I'm going to put the flat on the top rack. And I'm going to put the point below it. So now I'm just going to let the brisket sit and cook, smoke for maybe 5 hours or so, checking on it, adding wood as I need. I'll talk about fire, how I manage the fire here in a second, but I started with a bed of charcoal. There's nothing magical about making barbecue. You just want to apply heat over a long period of time, and that'll render the fat, it'll cook down the collagen, it'll just make everything nice and moist and tender. So what I like to do is start with a nice bed of charcoal. Because my smoker isn't that big and it's a vertical smoker, I want to have a good heat source, which I have right there, and now I'm going to add wood to it. So I've cut down smaller pieces of wood so they'll burn really nice, but not so big that I'll get a raging fire and overheat the meat and the cooker. So I'm just going to add some wood and let it burn so it burns nice and hot, and I get good combustion and nice smoke, not like really thick dark smoke, because you don't want that. That's really bad. It'll just give the meat an off taste. So you want nice clean smoke. You almost don't even want to be able to see the smoke. That's the type of smoke you're going for. So I just like cutting the wood down into smaller pieces and then adding it to the fire and letting it burn completely. You don't need to soak it, nothing like that. So I'm just going to use sticks of wood, and this is maple. That's what I have readily available, and I really like maple. It's a really neutral tasting wood. It produces a neutral tasting smoke, I should say. Same with some of, I like apple wood as well, and hickory. The other thing I want to mention is the water pan. That acts more like a moderator to protect the meat a bit and keep the chamber, obviously the cook chamber, moist and with high humidity. So on my cooker, I control the air vents this way, and I just want to keep a nice amount of air flowing through. So I'm going to add some wood now and just let this cook. So as you can see here, the wood is caught now and it's just burning nicely, and I'll show you what the smoke looks like up on the chimney. So you can barely see the smoke coming out, and that's what you want. You want just nice, wispy, clean smoke. The other thing I forgot to mention was about temperature. I usually cook about 250 to 275 Fahrenheit over the course of the whole cook. It's been about 3 hours. I'm just going to check on it. I've been adding fuel. It's looking really good, starting to build a little bark on it. The fire's burning really nice and clean down there. Water pan's doing well. Alright, I'm going to close this up before I lose too much heat. Also, I'm just going to give the meat a little sprit of water, just to keep it moist. So I've been feeding the fire constantly since I started it. After using charcoal, I've switched over to burning stick wood, these little tiny pieces of wood, because I can't burn big wood in my smoker, so I'm burning little pieces just to get that true, just wood-fired cook. And so you need to use little pieces. The downside to that is you have to feed it often, so you have to feed it like I have to add wood every 20 minutes or so, maybe every 20-25 minutes. Sometimes I can stretch it out to 30 minutes to maintain temperature. So that's just one little thing I've kind of figured out over the course of using my smoker. Okay, here we are 4 hours into the cook. We're starting to get some really nice color on them. I'm gonna let it go for maybe another hour, and then I'm gonna wrap it in butcher's paper. You can wrap it in foil or butcher's paper. They call it a Texas crutch or a Texas cheat, but I like doing it because it just makes it a little easier, it makes good brisket, and I'll probably end up popping it in the oven because at that point it's not going to really collect any more smoke. So I already got the smokiness, and I just want to cook it the rest of the way without having to monitor the fire. Just makes it a lot easier. That's just the way I like doing it, but you can certainly cook the whole thing completely on your smoker if you like. Alright, it's been about 6 hours and it's time to wrap. I've been checking on it. I've moved the flat down below just so I could get my gloves and grab the flat first. I'm going to leave the point on for maybe another, I don't know, half an hour to an hour just to get a little more color on it. But it's looking really nice. So I'm going to grab the flat, take it in, and wrap it. And I'm using butcher's paper, but it's entirely possible to use tin foil, and I've used that a lot too. The only thing is it comes out and it steams it a little bit more and it cooks it a bit quicker, but it still makes a nice brisket. So we got some nice bark going on there. That's looking really nice. And that's not burnt, that's actual caramelization or the Maillard reaction. Can't pronounce it properly, but yeah, that's what's going on there. Okay, now it's time to wrap. I have my butcher's paper out. I'm going to put the brisket down like this. Just give it a good right about there. And the bark formation on this is beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. And then I'm going to put it on a tray to keep it off the bottom, a rack off the bottom of the pan, so that the oil can kind of render through. just like as if it was still cooking on the barbecue. Alright, I'm going to stick this in the oven at 250 or 275 for the next, I'm going to say 5 to 6 hours checking on it. So I'll do the point next, exactly the same way. Alright, I have the oven set to 250. I'll put in the flat first, and then I'll wrap up the point and do the same. Alright, so the point's starting to get some nice color on that. Just because where I had on the top some of the drippings were dripping on it and wasn't getting all the full, I guess, caramelization or heat on it. So I'm just going to let the point go for a little bit longer, and then I'm going to wrap it. So I'll take it inside and wrap it here maybe 20-25 minutes. Okay, so I've taken the flat out. It's ready to be unwrapped. I've let it actually rest for 15 minutes, and it's looking really good. It's oily, the fat is rendered out really well, the connective tissue is broken down. I can tell by the touch, by feeling it, that it's done. I don't even really bother to use a thermometer. I just got a feel for it now. So just by touching it, you can see how jiggly it is, and it's just ready to be enjoyed. It's got a really nice bark formation, and when I cut into it, it's got a beautiful smoke ring. It doesn't fall apart too much, but it's still nice and tender, so it's not overdone. The flat is the hardest part to gauge because it's so dry. You can dry it out really easily, and this is the thinnest part where I'm slicing right now, but it's looking really good. This was a sample that we had, and it was just awesome before the point. So there, it looks really good. So here's the point. I let this go for about another hour to an hour and a half, and then I let it rest. It's important to rest the meat so it reabsorbs some of the moisture. It looks awesome. The bark formation is amazing. This was so good. It's unbelievable how good this was. Like the fattier, I prefer the fattier part of the brisket, which the point is. See how jiggly it is here, how soft the fat has been rendered out. I am not very good at cutting the brisket, so I kind of do a poor job at this. I'm still learning how to properly cut a brisket because you want to get it across the grain. And here I couldn't really tell exactly which way the grain ran, so I didn't do the best job. But regardless, it still tasted amazing. So I'm not too worried about not cutting it properly. I'm learning, so just if you decide to do this, just trial and error, you'll figure it out. I'm starting to figure it out more and more every time I do this, and it just came out so good. You can see here just the fat, and the meat is just super juicy, and that fat that renders down is delicious. And the bark, you gotta have a little piece of bark on every piece of the brisket when you slice it, so that's really important. The bark is so good. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's how I smoke a beef brisket. It's not hard, it just takes time, a little practice, trial and error. Don't be discouraged, don't be intimidated, give it a try. Beef brisket is just so good, it's amazing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing, give this a thumbs up if this helped you out, and thanks for watching, and I'll be posting more videos.